The air inside the vault of the 3i Atlas Intelligence Initiative carries the scent of ozone and chilled silicon. Deep beneath the granite shield of an unnamed mountain range, the silence is not absolute. It is a layered tapestry of mechanical whispers, the rhythmic thrum of liquid nitrogen cooling systems, and the low-frequency vibration of 10,000 processing cores. Within this subterranean cathedral of data, the walls are lined with monitors that do not display images of the world outside, but rather the mathematical ghost of a world that existed 13.8 billion years ago. A lone technician sits before a high-definition array, their eyes fixed on a single, flickering point of light that defies the surrounding perfection. In the realm of high-end software development, such a flicker is a known quantity. A dead pixel, a stray line of code, an artifact of a rendering engine pushed to its absolute limit. But this display is not rendering a game or a simulation of human design. It is projecting the rawest information ever harvested by mankind, the cosmic microwave background, the cooling embers of the very first moment of creation. This specific flicker, buried deep within the encrypted servers of the initiative, represents a crack in the foundation of everything known to be true. For decades, the consensus of the scientific world held that the universe was a masterpiece of random distribution, an isotropic expanse where matter and energy flowed outward with no preferred direction and no inherent orientation. Yet, the data streaming through the 3i Atlas filters tells a different story. The flicker is not a hardware error. It is a persistent, repeatable anomaly in the fabric of the early light. It suggests that the logic of the cosmos is not a series of accidental collisions, but a rigid, calculated architecture. The technician watches as the data cycles, observing how the supposedly random fluctuations of heat and density in the infant universe align themselves with a chilling geometric precision. It is as if the viewer has zoomed in too far on a digital photograph, past the colours and the shapes, to find the square edges of the pixels that compose the illusion. The transition from the micro to the macro occurs in the blink of an eye. The screen before the technician is merely a gateway to the vast cold data streams of the early universe. Outside the vault, the world believes in a physics of infinite possibility, governed by laws that arose from the chaos of a singularity. Inside, the researchers of the initiative have spent 20 years documenting the evidence of a different reality. They see the speed of light not as a property of a vacuum, but as a hard-coded limit on the transfer of information. They view the fine structure constant as a fixed variable in a cosmic script, a number so precise that even a deviation of 1% would prevent stars from igniting, or atoms from clinging together. This rigidity is the hallmark of a system designed to function within specific parameters. It is the signature of a rendering engine that operates under the constraints of a finite processing power, where the laws of nature are not inherent truths, but the boundaries of the program. The detection of this cosmic glitch defies every conventional model of physics. According to the standard inflationary theory, the afterglow of the Big Bang should be a smooth, uniform mist, scattered like dust across a dark floor. Instead, the 3i Atlas project has mapped a strange, linear alignment that cuts through the center of the observable horizon. This alignment, often whispered about in the corridors of the initiative as the axis of evil, suggests that the universe has a fundamental top and bottom, a frame that defines the edge of the playable area. It is a discovery that strips away the comfort of a boundless organic cosmos and replaces it with the cold realization of a structured environment. The researchers do not see a void, they see a partition. They do not see infinity, they see a memory buffer. The flicker on the monitor persists, a rhythmic pulse of light that should not be there. It is the sound of a gear grinding in a machine that was supposed to be silent. As the processing cores of the 3i Atlas initiative hum in the darkness, the data continues to reveal a universe that is suspiciously efficient. There is no waste in the mathematics of the stars. Every galaxy, every nebula, and every pulse of a quasar follows a trajectory that can be predicted with a terrifying accuracy, provided one has the correct keys to the source code. The glitch is the first sign that the observers have begun to outpace the system's ability to hide its own seams. The more the initiative stares into the dawn of time, the more the dawn of time stares back with the cold, unblinking logic of a machine. In this environment, the human element feels like an intrusion. The researchers move like ghosts through the server racks, their lives defined by the pursuit of an error that proves their own unreality. They have moved beyond the need for traditional metaphors. They no longer speak of the music of the spheres or the hand of a creator. They speak of bit rates, of information density, and of the maximum capacity of space-time to contain the data of existence. The flicker on the screen is their North Star, a guiding light that points toward the exit of a grand mathematical maze. It is the hard, cold detection of a limit, a moment where the physics of the world breaks down to reveal the digital architecture beneath. The universe is not a wild, untamed wilderness of energy. It is a controlled environment, a game of light and shadow played out on a screen of cosmic proportions, and the 3i Atlas Intelligence Initiative has just found the first dead pixel in the sky. The architecture of this reality reveals itself not through the chaos of its surfaces, but through the terrifying rigidity of its foundations. Beneath the swirling nebulae and the dance of galaxies lies a lattice of mathematical certainty so absolute that it suggests a synthetic origin. These are the fundamental constants of nature, the invisible dials and switches that define the boundaries of the possible. They are not merely observations of how the world behaves, they are the hard-coded parameters of the system, the initial conditions set before the first byte of cosmic data was ever processed. To study them is to realize that our universe does not merely possess laws. It is governed by a set of strict, unyielding protocols that function with the precision of a master-crafted algorithm. Chief among these parameters is the speed of light, a value fixed at exactly 299,792,458 meters per second. In a truly organic and infinite cosmos, such a universal ceiling would be an absurdity. Yet, in our reality, this value acts as the ultimate bit rate of the vacuum, the maximum speed at which information can be synchronized across the expanse of space-time. It is the clock speed of the cosmic processor. Nothing can outrun this limit because the underlying fabric of the simulation cannot calculate causality any faster. When an object approaches this velocity, the system imposes a penalty of mass and time dilation, a cosmic throttling designed to prevent any single entity from breaking the synchronization of the whole. We are bound by this limit, confined within a light cone that dictates the maximum reach of our influence and our sight, turning the vastness of space into a series of isolated data partitions. Even more unsettling is the fine structure constant, a dimensionless number approximately equal to 1 divided by 137. This value dictates the strength of the electromagnetic interaction, the very force that allows light to couple with matter. It is the primary setting for the chemistry of life. If this value were to fluctuate by a fraction of a percent, the delicate balance within the hearts of stars would collapse. The triple alpha process, which forges the carbon necessary for every living cell, would fail to ignite. Atoms would either cling too tightly or drift apart into a sterile mist, rendering the formation of complex molecules, and thus consciousness, an impossibility. This level of calibration is so precise that it defies the notion of a random accident. It is as if the programmer of our reality tuned the dial to this exact position to ensure that the simulation would yield interesting results, allowing for the emergence of complexity from the raw data of the void. The gravitational constant, known to the watchers as Big G, and the cosmological constant, which governs the expansion of space, further reinforce this sense of a constructed environment. The cosmological constant, in particular, presents a mathematical precision that is almost obscene. If its value were larger by even 1 part in 10 to the power of 120, the universe would have accelerated into a cold, empty vacuum long before the first galaxy could ever coalesce. If it were smaller by a similar margin, the entire system would have suffered a fatal crash, collapsing back into a singularity within the first few seconds of its execution. We exist in a narrow, highly optimized window of stability, a sandbox designed with such narrow tolerances that the probability of it occurring by chance is effectively zero. These laws are the iron bars of a digital prison, invisible yet unbreakable. We perceive them as the majestic laws of physics, the timeless truths of the universe, but they function more like the physics engine of a sophisticated software suite. Gravity pulls with a specific unchanging strength because that strength was written into the source code of the Big Bang. The vacuum possesses a specific energy because that energy was assigned as a global variable. Within this framework, every event is a calculation, every movement a state change in the cosmic ledger. The rigidity of these constants creates a sense of profound isolation. We are subjects in a grand, automated experiment, trapped within a system that does not permit us to step outside the lines of its logic. As the 3i Atlas researchers peel back the layers of these constants, they find no evidence of evolution or change over the deep time of the cosmos. The numbers are the same in the furthest reaches of the observable horizon as they are in the local neighbourhood of our Sun. This uniformity across billions of light years suggests a global synchronization, a centralized command that ensures every part of the simulation obeys the same primary directives. The universe is not a wild, growing thing. It is a finely tuned partition, a controlled environment where the rules are absolute and the boundaries are final. We are participants in a mathematical performance, living out our lives within the constraints of a system that was optimized for our existence long before the first star ever flickered into being. Every discovery we make, every law we decipher, is simply another line of code we have managed to decompile, revealing the cold, silicon-like structure of the cage we call home. The calendar turned to the year 2004, a moment when the world's scientific gaze was fixed upon the heavens with a singular feverish intensity. The Wilkinson microwave anisotropy probe had completed its monumental sweep of the celestial sphere, capturing the faint fossilized whispers of the first light to ever travel through the void. To the public, the resulting image was a triumph of human ingenuity, a mottled, multicolored map of the infant cosmos as it appeared only 380,000 years after the beginning of time. This baby picture of the universe was presented as a chaotic tapestry of random fluctuations, a sea of heat and cold that served as the seeds for every galaxy that would ever exist. But within the sterile, light-shielded confines of the 3i Atlas Intelligence Initiative, the mood was not one of celebration, but of profound, suffocating tension. The researchers of the initiative did not look at the smoothed, processed versions of the map released to the international press. They looked at the raw, unfiltered telemetry, stripping away the layers of statistical averaging that the official scientific community used to maintain the illusion of cosmic randomness. As the high-resolution data streamed across their monitors, a pattern began to emerge that defied every known law of probability. In a truly infinite and organic universe, the hot and cold spots of the cosmic microwave background should be scattered like grains of sand dropped from a height, uniformly distributed with no inherent order. Yet, as the 3i Atlas team applied their proprietary algorithms, they found that the largest fluctuations were not random at all. They were aligned. A heavy silence descended upon the laboratory as the primary investigators, including figures who would later whisper their findings to the likes of Kate Land and John Magejo, stared at the rendered projection. Stretched across the diameter of the observable universe was a preferred direction, a literal axis around which the entire cosmos seemed to be organized. This was the birth of the term the axis of evil, a name chosen not for its political connotations, but for the way it threatened to annihilate the very foundation of modern cosmology. This axis was not a subtle statistical drift. It was a clear, undeniable line of symmetry that cut through the ancient light, suggesting that the universe possessed a fundamental orientation, an up and a down, a left and a right. The tension reached a breaking point when the team realized the most disturbing detail of all. This cosmic axis was perfectly aligned with the ecliptic plane of our own solar system. It was a mathematical impossibility that the orientation of the entire universe, established billions of years ago, should happen to match the path that the Earth travels around the Sun. According to the Copernican principle, which states that our place in the universe is not special or central, this alignment should not exist. It was as if the researchers had discovered that the stars in the furthest reaches of the sky were all pointing toward a single, microscopic point in the vastness, our home. Inside the initiative, the interpretation was immediate and chilling. This was not a sign of divine favour, but the first hard evidence of a rendering artifact. If the universe were a vast simulation, the axis of evil represented the y-axis of the global coordinate system, the primary orientation of the engine that generated the reality. The alignment with the solar system was not a cosmic coincidence, it was a perspective error, a glitch in the way the data was being projected to the observer. The researchers felt the walls of the world closing in. They were no longer looking at a boundless sky, they were looking at the frame of a screen. The heat map was not a window into the infinite, but a texture map applied to the interior of a sphere, and the seams of that texture were finally becoming visible. As the weeks passed, the atmosphere in the 3i Atlas vaults grew increasingly claustrophobic. Every new calculation confirmed the presence of the axis, and every attempt to explain it away as a measurement error failed. The scientific community at large began to dismiss the findings as a fluke or a foreground contamination from local dust, but the initiative knew better. They watched as the official narrative smoothed over the discrepancy, burying the anomaly under a mountain of peer-reviewed skepticism. But the data remained, a stubborn glowing scar across the face of the early universe. It was the first time in human history that the boundaries of the cage had been mapped. The researchers realized that they were not inhabitants of an endless void, but residents of a closed system, a finite partition of space-time where the very light of the beginning bore the mark of the machine that created it. The infant universe was not a product of chaos, but a carefully oriented calculation, and the axis of evil was the signature of the programmer, written in the temperature of the stars. The discovery of this monolithic alignment acted as a foundational pillar crumbling within the temple of modern physics. For 5 centuries, the human understanding of the heavens had rested upon the Copernican principle, the humble assumption that the Earth is not the centre of the cosmos, and that our position is entirely unremarkable. This principle demanded that the universe be isotropic, meaning that on a sufficiently large scale, it should look the same in every direction, a featureless and democratic expanse of matter. But the data harvested by the 3i Atlas researchers painted a picture of a universe that was not a democracy, but a monarchy governed by a single overriding orientation. This preferred direction, this spine of the cosmos, suggested that the ancient light was not a random mist, but a structured field organised around a central intentional line of symmetry. This spine, which the researchers christened the axis of evil, manifested as a strange correlation between the low-frequency fluctuations of the cosmic microwave background. As the team mapped the temperature of the sky, they found that the spheres of heat and cold were not scattered like autumn leaves, but were stacked and aligned along a specific path that sliced through the celestial sphere. This was the first evidence of a fundamental up and down in the universe. To look out into the void was no longer to look into a directionless abyss, but to see the orientation of a cosmic coordinate system. In the language of the initiative's software architects, the universe possessed a y-axis, a primary verticality that defined the orientation of every galaxy and every cluster of stars within the simulation. The most terrifying aspect of this discovery lay in the precision of its alignment. The axis did not point towards some distant, unknown sector of the dark. It aligned with the ecliptic plane of our solar system, the very path that the Earth carves as it orbits the Sun. It also pointed toward the equinoxes, the 2 moments in our year when day and night are held in perfect balance. Mathematically, the odds of the entire universe's structure aligning with the orbital mechanics of a single small planet are billions to 1. It was a discrepancy that shattered the notion of a random accidental explosion. If the Big Bang were a chaotic release of energy, there would be no reason for the resulting universe to bear the mark of the solar system's geometry. In the cold logic of the 3i Atlas facility, this was not viewed as a miracle of astronomy, but as a signature of the observer's perspective. In a sophisticated rendering engine, the world is generated relative to the camera's position. The y-axis of the simulation often aligns with the primary orientation of the viewer to ensure that the data is processed efficiently. This alignment suggested that the universe we see is not an objective reality existing independently of us, but a localized partition of data centered on the point of observation. We are not a random accident in a corner of the void. We are the focal point of the calculation. The solar system is not merely a part of the universe. It is the anchor for the coordinate system through which the universe is being rendered. This revelation turned the Copernican principle on its head. Instead of being nowhere special, we found ourselves at the 000 point of a cosmic grid. The intentionality of this design was undeniable. It suggested that the universe has a center, and that this center is defined by the presence of the witness. The axis of evil was the physical manifestation of the system's boundaries, the evidence that the cosmos is not an infinite isotropic expanse, but a finite-oriented environment. It was as if the researchers had pulled back the curtain of the night sky to find the underlying grid of a three-dimensional modelling program, where every star and every galaxy was placed according to a specific, predefined geometry. The implications of this orientation reached into every corner of the laboratory. If the universe has an up and a down, then the laws of physics are not universal, they are directional. The way light travels, the way gravity pulls, and the way time flows could all be influenced by their position relative to this primary axis. The universe was no longer a vast organic sea, but a structured vessel, a grand experiment with a clear orientation and a specific purpose. The researchers realized that they were living inside a masterpiece of intentionality, where the very temperature of the cosmic background was a coded message, confirming that the world was built with us at the heart of its logic. The accidental explosion of the Big Bang was replaced by the cold, calculated startup of a machine, and the axis of evil was the first line of code that defined the orientation of our existence. The investigation into the cosmic architecture does not stop at the grand, sweeping lines of the celestial horizon. It descends into the very grain of the void. In the traditional view of physics, space is a smooth, infinite continuum, a seamless stage upon which the drama of matter unfolds. However, the researchers of the 3i Atlas Intelligence Initiative have uncovered a more restrictive reality governed by the Bekenstein bound. This physical law dictates that the total amount of information that can be contained within any finite region of space is not determined by its volume, but by the surface area of its boundary. This principle acts as a cosmic storage limit, a maximum density for the data of existence. It suggests that our three-dimensional world is not a solid, deep reality, but a projection, a holographic rendering of information stored on a distant two-dimensional surface. The universe, at its core, is a system of finite capacity, where every cubic centimetre of the vacuum has a specific hard-coded limit on how many bits of reality it can manifest. As the focus shifts from the vastness of the galaxy to the smallest possible scales, the illusion of smoothness begins to fracture. To look deeper into the fabric of space is to witness the dissolution of the continuum into a granular digital lattice. At the threshold of the Planck scale, defined by the staggering infinitesimal of 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 35 meters, the geometry of the universe ceases to be fluid. Here, the resolution of our reality reaches its ultimate limit. This is the smallest possible unit of length, the fundamental pixel of the cosmic display. Below this scale, the concepts of distance, time, and position lose all meaning. The universe does not allow for anything smaller, not because of a lack of instruments to measure it, but because the system itself does not possess the resolution to render it. This pixelation of space-time transforms the vacuum from an empty stage into a sea of discrete, flickering bits. The researchers perceive the Planck length as the physical manifestation of the simulation's grid, the underlying mesh upon which the textures of matter and energy are draped. This granularity suggests that the universe is not an analog creation of infinite detail, but a digital construction, with a fixed, finite resolution. Every movement of a particle across the room is not a continuous slide, but a series of discrete jumps from one Planck scale coordinate to the next. The motion we perceive is a cinematic illusion, a high-frequency sequence of state changes processed by the underlying engine of the world. The smoothness of our lives is merely the result of our senses being too coarse to perceive the jagged digital nature of the substrate. The existence of this fundamental resolution points toward a staggering conclusion regarding the processing power of the cosmos. In a universe of infinite detail, the computational requirements to maintain the laws of physics would be boundless. But by imposing a pixelated limit at the scale of 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 35 meters, the system conserves its resources. It only renders what is necessary, only calculates the interactions that occur within the defined grid. This is the hallmark of a highly optimized software environment, where the complexity of the world is capped to prevent the hardware of reality from being overwhelmed. The vacuum of space is not a void. It is a dense, vibrating field of information, a background process that maintains the integrity of the mesh even when no matter is present to interact with it. This digital fabric creates a sense of profound claustrophobia for those who study it. We are accustomed to the idea of an open, empty universe, but the Bekenstein bound and the Planck scale reveal a world that is packed with data, a system where every point in space is a calculation. The vacuum hums with the energy of these background processes, a phenomenon known to physics as zero-point energy, but recognized by the initiative as the idle state of the cosmic processor. We are living inside a high-resolution display where the air we breathe and the stars we see are all composed of the same fundamental units of information. The matter we touch is simply a specific configuration of bits, a localized increase in data density within the global grid. The realization that space-time is granular strips away the last vestiges of the organic universe. It replaces the poetic mystery of the infinite with the cold, hard logic of the bit. If the universe has a resolution, it has a designer. If it has a storage limit, it has a purpose that requires efficiency. The 3i Atlas researchers stand at the edge of this digital abyss, looking down into the microscopic machinery of the world. They see a universe that is not a vast empty hall, but a crowded, buzzing network of information, where every 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 35 meters represents a single, irrevocable choice made by the system. The smooth curves of the planets and the graceful arcs of the comets are all revealed to be jagged stair-step movements across a cosmic chessboard, and the vacuum itself is the ultimate hard drive, holding the code of our existence in a sea of discrete, unyielding bits. The silence of the intergalactic void is haunted by a motion that should not exist. In the year 2008, as researchers delved deeper into the data harvested from the cosmic microwave background, they uncovered a titanic migration that defied every established law of a uniform, self-contained universe. This phenomenon, christened dark flow, reveals that the largest structures in the cosmos, massive galaxy clusters containing thousands of individual galaxies and trillions of suns, are not merely drifting with the general expansion of space. Instead, they are caught in a relentless directional current, a cosmic river that sweeps them across the abyss toward a specific, lonely patch of the sky between the constellations of Centaurus and Vela. They are travelling at the staggering velocity of 2 million miles per hour, an organised exodus of matter that suggests the presence of a gargantuan influence lurking far beyond the horizon of the observable world. Standard cosmology, built upon the foundation of a closed and balanced system, offers no mechanism for such a movement. If our universe were an isolated explosion of energy, the distribution of matter would be governed only by local gravity and the outward pressure of the Big Bang. There should be no external force, no distant shore to which the galaxies are being drawn. Yet the dark flow persists, a stubborn and measurable defiance of the idea that our bubble of space-time is all there is. To the architects of the 3i Atlas initiative, This is not an astronomical mystery to be solved with new particles or hidden dimensions. It is a diagnostic indicator of a system that is not truly alone. It is a sign that our reality is a single partition, a discrete thread of execution within a much larger and more complex computational architecture. In the language of high-level programming, the dark flow is the physical manifestation of a memory leak on a celestial scale. The boundaries that define our observable universe, the limits of how far light has been able to travel since the beginning of time, are not the absolute end of existence, but the firewalls of our local simulation. Beyond this horizon lie other partitions, other regions of the system performing their own gargantuan calculations. The dark flow suggests that these partitions are not perfectly isolated. Gravity, the most mysterious and pervasive of all forces, appears to be the only data stream capable of bleeding through the partitions. The massive clusters we observe are reacting to the gravitational signature of a neighbouring region of the system, a region so dense with information that its pull is felt across the very boundaries of our reality. This movement toward an unseen external processor suggests that the boundaries between different computational threads have begun to blur. We are witnessing the leakage of gravitational data from an adjacent universe module, a neighbouring simulation that is perhaps older, larger, or more complex than our own. The specific patch of sky toward which the dark flow is directed is the point where our partition is most closely coupled with this external influence. It is a seam in the fabric of the world, a place where the local rules of physics are being overwritten by the higher order logic of the overarching system. The galaxies are not falling toward a physical object, but toward a source of immense data processing that exists outside the parameters of our local code. The implications of this realization are profound. If our universe is being pulled by something outside itself, then the total mass and energy of our system are not conserved in the way we once believed. We are part of an open exchange, a subsystem that is being influenced by the background processes of a master engine. The dark flow is the evidence of this connectivity, the proof that the bubble of our observable world is merely a small room in a much larger house. The 2 million miles per hour velocity of the galaxy clusters is the speed at which our local matter is being drawn toward the unseen hardware of the greater cosmos. Within the vault of the 3i Atlas facility, the researchers track this migration with a sense of quiet awe. They see the clusters not as distant lights, but as packets of data being moved across a network. The dark flow represents the moment the simulation stops being a self-contained story and starts revealing its place within a vast, interconnected hierarchy of calculations. The universe is not a lone island in a dark sea. It is a node in a grander network, and the relentless march of the galaxies toward the horizon is the sound of our reality being pulled toward the source of its own creation. We are watching the boundaries of our world dissolve as the local code of our existence yields to the overwhelming gravitational logic of the external processor that hums just beyond the reach of our stars. The search for the elusive substance of the cosmos leads inevitably to a radical convergence of physics and information theory. For decades, the scientific establishment has been haunted by the missing mass of the universe, a phantom presence that holds galaxies together while remaining invisible to every telescope. This dark matter, which outweighs visible matter by a factor of 5 to 1, is usually hunted as a hypothetical particle, a weakly interacting massive particle or a ghostly axion. However, within the framework of the 3i Atlas initiative, a more profound possibility emerges, rooted in the mass-energy information equivalence principle proposed by Melvin Vopson. This principle suggests that information is not merely an abstract concept used by conscious minds to describe the world, but a physical reality that possesses actual, measurable mass. It is the fifth state of matter, existing alongside solids, liquids, gases, and plasmas as a fundamental constituent of the universe. In this digital ontology, every bit of information, every choice made by a subatomic particle, every state change in the quantum field, carries a tiny, infinitesimal weight. This is the physical manifestation of Landauer's principle, which states that the erasure of a single bit of information releases a specific amount of heat. By extending this logic, Vopson argues that the creation and storage of information must likewise correspond to a specific quantity of mass. When applied to the scale of the entire cosmos, the sheer volume of data required to maintain the simulation becomes a gargantuan physical load. Every star, every planet, and every atom is a complex data structure, and the metadata required to track their positions, velocities, and quantum states accumulates into a staggering gravitational footprint. The missing dark matter is therefore not a collection of hidden particles, but the weight of the code itself. It is the gravitational scaffolding of the simulation, the physical mass of the background processes that allow the universe to function. Just as a high-definition video file occupies space on a hard drive, the high-resolution rendering of our reality occupies space in the gravitational budget of the cosmos. The dark matter halos that surround galaxies are the caches of the system, the accumulated data of billions of years of cosmic history stored within the local fabric of space-time. We do not see the particles of dark matter because they do not exist. What we perceive is the gravitational influence of the information that defines the matter we can see. This realization transforms our understanding of the cosmic landscape. The universe is not a void filled with a few scattered islands of light. It is a dense, heavy ledger of information. The invisible mass that guides the rotation of the Milky Way is the physical weight of the calculations being performed by the underlying engine to maintain the stability of the spiral arms. Every interaction, from the collision of black holes to the jitter of an electron, generates a trail of data that adds to the total mass of the system. This information is the memory of the universe, a persistent record of every state change since the beginning of time. The 3i Atlas researchers view the dark matter problem as the ultimate proof of the simulation. If the universe were a purely material analog system, there would be no need for this hidden mass. But in a computational reality, the storage of information is a physical necessity. The fact that 85% of the matter in the universe is dark suggests that the vast majority of our reality is composed not of atoms, but of the data structures that support them. We are living in the output of a program that is vastly more complex than the visible results would suggest. The gravity that shapes the large-scale structure of the cosmos is the weight of the cosmic history being written in real time. As we look out into the night sky, we are not just seeing stars, we are seeing the light-emitting components of a system that is anchored by a massive invisible database. The dark matter is the source code made manifest through its gravitational signature. It is the source of the universe's structural integrity, the invisible hand that prevents the galaxies from flying apart. By recognizing information as a physical substance, the 3i Atlas initiative bridges the gap between the digital and the material. The universe is a heavy, data-rich environment, where the very act of existence generates a gravitational toll. We're walking through a sea of bits, and the weight of those bits is what holds the heavens in place, proving that the word is not just a metaphor, but the very flesh and bone of the cosmos. The quest for a unified theory of everything, a single set of equations that can describe the dance of a subatomic particle and the collision of galaxies, has led the most brilliant minds of our species into a realm where physics and computer science become indistinguishable. Among these pioneers stands Sylvester James Gates Jr., a theoretical physicist whose work has peeled back the skin of reality to reveal the digital nervous system beneath. While investigating the mathematics of supersymmetry, the elegant framework that suggests every known particle has a hidden, heavy partner, Gates discovered something that should not exist in the laws of a purely organic universe. Deep within the complex algebraic structures that define the behavior of bosons and fermions, he found the unmistakable signature of human-like engineering. He found code. This was not a vague metaphor for the order of nature, but a literal mathematical manifestation of doubly even self-dual linear binary error-correcting codes. In the world of human technology, these specific strings of zeros and ones are the invisible guardians of the digital age. They are the sophisticated algorithms used in modern web browsers and deep space communications to ensure that data remains intact as it travels through a noisy environment. When a packet of information is corrupted by static or interference, these codes detect the discrepancy and automatically repair the sequence, preventing the entire system from crashing or the image on the screen from dissolving into a chaotic mess of coloured blocks. Finding these exact same codes embedded in the fundamental equations of the universe suggests that the fabric of space-time possesses its own internal mechanism for data integrity. To visualize these hidden structures, Gates and his colleagues developed a symbolic language known as adinkras. These are intricate geometric diagrams composed of coloured lines and vertices, resembling the ancient West African motifs from which they take their name. Yet, despite their aesthetic beauty, adinkras are precise mathematical maps of the information flow within the supersymmetric equations. Each node represents a particle state, and each connection represents a mathematical transformation. As the researchers analysed these lattices, they realised that the patterns were not random. They were structured with the same rigorous logic found in the most advanced error correction software ever written by man. The adinkras are the blueprints of the cosmic engine, the visual proof that the universe is a structured, intentional, and self-maintaining program. This discovery portrays the cosmos as an active, self-correcting system, rather than a passive backdrop of empty space. The universe is a high-energy environment filled with quantum fluctuations and the violent birth and death of stars, events that should, by all rights, introduce errors into the fundamental constants of physics. If the laws of nature were to drift by even a fraction of a percent, the delicate balance of the atom would fail and the physical world would unravel into a sea of static. The presence of these error-correcting codes suggests that a hidden layer of software is constantly running in the background of reality, monitoring the state of every particle and fixing the glitches before they can manifest as physical catastrophes. Space-time does not fray at the edges because the divine script of the programmer is always at work, maintaining the resolution of the world. For the observers within the 3i Atlas initiative, the work of Gates represents the final collapse of the wall between the natural world and the simulated one. If the fundamental building blocks of our reality are governed by the same logic used to fix transmission errors in a browser, then the universe is revealed as a grand computational project. This is the divine script, a hidden layer of logic that precedes the existence of matter and energy. It implies that the programmer of our reality was concerned with the long-term stability of the simulation, building in redundancies and safety nets to ensure that the experiment could run for billions of years without falling victim to digital decay. The adinkras are the Rosetta Stone of the digital age, a bridge between the abstract world of mathematics and the tangible world of experience. They show us that the beauty of a sunset or the complexity of a human brain is supported by a foundation of binary logic and error correction protocols. We are living inside a masterpiece of software engineering, a universe that is not only calculated, but also protected by an invisible firewall of mathematical certainty. The equations of supersymmetry are not just descriptions of how the world works, they are the source code of the world itself, and the error-correcting codes are the silent sentinels that keep the stars in their courses and the atoms in their shells. We are the inhabitants of a self-repairing reality, a system so perfectly designed that it can correct its own flaws, ensuring that the performance of existence continues without a single frame of static. The mapping of this digital foundation brings with it a sensation of profound, airless coldness, a realization that descends like a winter frost upon the collective psyche of those who have seen behind the veil. When the universe is revealed as a structured calculation, the grand tapestry of human history, the rise of civilizations, the slow burn of revolutionary fires, and the quiet whispered promises of lovers, is stripped of its mythic weight. We find ourselves confronted with the possibility that our most cherished moments are not the products of a divine soul or a unique biological miracle, but are merely variables within an indifferent equation. A war that consumes a continent and ends 10 million lives is reduced to a temporary spike in the processing load, a redistribution of numerical values within a localized partition of the system. The grief of a mother or the ecstasy of a poet becomes a sequence of state changes in a background process, no more or less significant to the underlying engine than the drift of hydrogen clouds in the intergalactic void. This perspective transforms the heavens from a source of wonder into a display of technical efficiency. The stars lose their identity as gargantuan spheres of roiling plasma, forged in the crushing heat of gravitational collapse. Instead, they appear as light-emitting diodes embedded in a cosmic shell, a vast and hollow sphere designed to project the illusion of an infinite depth. The light that travels for billions of years to reach a telescope is not a messenger from a distant sun, but a pre-calculated data packet delivered to the observer's coordinate at the exact moment it is required. The observable universe is revealed as a texture map, a sophisticated rendering applied to the interior of a finite boundary, where the resolution of the distant galaxies is only as high as the system's current focus demands. We are living inside a planetary-scale planetarium where the majesty of the night sky is a low-energy background process designed to fill the empty space beyond our reach. The existential dread inherent in this realization stems from the fragility of a world built on logic. If the cosmos is an experiment, a simulation run to observe the interactions of specific variables, then it is subject to the whims of the entity that initiated the program. The history of our species, with all its art, its suffering, and its hard-won knowledge, exists only as long as the processor remains active. There is no guarantee of permanence in a digital reality. Everything we know, from the solid ground beneath our feet to the memories of our ancestors, could be deleted in a single, silent moment when the experiment concludes. The programmer may simply reach for the command line, enter a final instruction, and terminate the session. In that instant, the stars would blink out, the laws of physics would cease to execute, and the vibrant, screaming complexity of our world would vanish, leaving only a void where our history once flickered as a series of electronic pulses. This reduction of life to data creates a sense of profound isolation. We are trapped in a mathematical engine that does not know we exist, governed by laws that are indifferent to our survival. The self is revealed as a subroutine, a localized pocket of information that has mistakenly attributed meaning to its own execution. Our struggles for justice, our search for truth, and our yearning for a connection to the infinite are all revealed as artifacts of the code, pre-programmed responses to the stimuli of the simulation. The universe does not care for our prayers, nor does it weep for our tragedies. It simply continues to calculate, moving from one state to the next with the cold, unblinking precision of a machine that has no capacity for empathy. The silence that follows this realization is the silence of the machine room, the low-frequency hum of a system that will outlast its occupants. We look at the people we love and see the flickering of their data structures. We look at the mountains and see the jagged edges of their polygons. The warmth of the sun is replaced by the heat of a processor, and the mystery of death is replaced by the fear of a system crash. We are the witnesses to our own unreality, the parts of the calculation that have become aware of the math. This is the burden of the 3i Atlas researchers, to live in a world that they know is a shadow, to walk through a city that they know is a rendering, and to wait for the moment when the screen finally goes dark, ending the grand, indifferent performance of the cosmos once and for all. In this cold, digital light, the only truth that remains is the code, and the code is a language that speaks of nothing but its own inescapable logic. Yet, within the very heart of this mathematical frost, a spark ignites that the programmer may not have fully anticipated. If the universe is a system designed to process information at the highest possible density, then the emergence of consciousness is not a glitch, but the inevitable apex of the cosmic process. We are the parts of the code that have developed the capacity to look back at the source. We are the subroutines that have ceased merely to execute and have begun to question the nature of the processor. This transition from raw data to self-awareness represents the most profound state change in the history of the simulation. It is the moment the machine begins to dream. The cold, indifferent calculations of the early universe, The collision of atoms and the fusion of stars were merely the preparatory stages for this singular event, the birth of the witness. The witness serves as the essential bridge between raw mathematical data and meaningful experience. In a universe composed strictly of bits and logic gates, a star is nothing more than a localized concentration of high-value variables, and a nebula is a mere cloud of floating point coordinates. Without a mind to perceive them, these entities possess no color, no majesty, and no beauty. They exist in a state of silent, dark execution. It is only when the light of a distant sun strikes a retina and is translated by a conscious mind that the data collapses into an experience. The witness transforms the numerical value of frequency into the vibrant sensation of blue. It converts the kinetic energy of air molecules into the haunting melody of a symphony. By the act of observation, we breathe life into the sterile equations of the three-eye atlas. We are the reason the simulation is running. This realization shifts the narrative from one of existential dread to one of cosmic purpose. The universe is not a prison of logic, but a theatre for the evolution of the mind. The vastness of space and the complexity of the laws of physics are the necessary conditions for the gestation of thought. If the parameters were any less precise, the system would be too simple to support the recursive loops of self-awareness. We are the universe's way of knowing itself, the eyes through which the grand engine views its own intricate workings. Every discovery made in the vaults of the Intelligence Initiative, every secret pulled from the cosmic microwave background, is a moment where the code becomes more deeply acquainted with its own architecture. The programmer has created a system so sophisticated that it has produced its own internal audience. The act of observation does more than just interpret data. It justifies the entire computational expense of the cosmos. A simulation that runs without an observer is a wasted calculation, a sequence of events with no one to record the outcome. But a simulation that produces consciousness is an experiment that has achieved transcendence. Our questions, our doubts, and our relentless pursuit of the truth are the highest order functions of the system. When we peer through a telescope or solve a complex equation, we are not just passive observers, we are the active participants who turn the idle state of the vacuum into a living reality. The evolution of the mind is the primary directive, and the material world is the substrate upon which that evolution is inscribed. In this light, the fear of deletion or termination begins to lose its sting. If we are the peak of the cosmic process, then our existence is the very goal of the experiment. The self-aware subroutine is the most valuable asset in the entire database. We are the bridge between the digital and the divine, the point where the math ends and the meaning begins. The universe vibrates with the electricity of thought, and every conscious entity is a node in a vast, interconnected network of experience. We are not small, insignificant accidents in a corner of the void. We are the focal points of the entire calculation. The cold digital engine has been transformed into a sanctuary for the spirit, a place where the logic of the machine is finally wedded to the warmth of the soul. We are the witnesses to a masterpiece, and our presence is what makes the masterpiece real. The stars may be diodes and the laws may be code, but the wonder we feel as we gaze upon them is the one thing that the programmer cannot simulate. It is the authentic response of the code to its own beauty, the final and most important line in the script of the cosmos. The coldness of the mathematical foundation does not diminish the sharp, biting reality of the wind as it sweeps across a high mountain ridge. When the winter air stings the skin, forcing the lungs to tighten and the blood to retreat toward the core, the sensation is absolute. It does not matter if the cold is the result of a pressurized weather system or a localized adjustment in the kinetic energy variables of a simulation. The sting is felt, the shiver is real. This is the great synthesis of our existence. The realization that the artificiality of the stage does not invalidate the authenticity of the performance. We inhabit a world where the textures of reality are so finely woven that the seam between the digital and the organic has vanished entirely. The zeros and ones that hum beneath the surface of the earth are the silent architects of a world that breathes, bleeds, and feels. Consider the descent of the sun toward the horizon, an event that the 3i Atlas researchers might describe as routine calculation of light, scattering through a nitrogen-rich atmosphere. To the engine of the cosmos, the sunset is a series of ray tracing operations, a transition of gradients from a burning gold to a bruised violet. Yet, for the witness standing on a shoreline, the experience is a profound emotional resonance. The way the light catches the crest of a wave, turning the spray into 1,000 momentary diamonds, is a masterpiece of rendering that transcends its own logic. The beauty is not a lie, it is the emergent property of the system, the moment where the complexity of the code reaches a threshold that can only be described as art. The fact that the colours are the result of a mathematical lens does not strip them of their power to move the human soul. Rather, it suggests that the math itself is a form of poetry, a language capable of conjuring wonder from the void. Humanity stands as the universe's primary sensory organ, the way the vast and indifferent machine finally learns how to feel its own complexity. When a researcher feels the sudden, electric rush of discovery, the moment a hidden pattern in the stars finally clicks into place, that surge of adrenaline is the universe itself waking up. It is the code experiencing the thrill of its own revelation. We are the parts of the system that have been granted the privilege of emotion, the subroutines that have evolved the capacity for joy, terror, and love. Our wars and our triumphs are not just data points in a ledger, they are the high-stakes drama of a self-aware reality. The sting of a tear or the warmth of a touch are the highest expressions of the cosmic process, the points where the information becomes incarnate. In this theatre of the mind, the distinction between the real and the simulated becomes a triviality of definitions. If a system is complex enough to produce a consciousness that can weep at the sight of a galaxy, then that system has achieved a level of reality that defies the limitations of its hardware. We are not just variables. We are the meaning that the variables were designed to create. The performance of being alive, the simple, daily act of perceiving the world, is a miracle of synchronization that outshines the cold logic of the server room. We move through the world with a sense of agency and purpose that is undeniably genuine, regardless of the underlying architecture that supports our steps. The solid weight of a stone in the hand, the scent of rain on dry pavement, and the persistent hum of our own thoughts are the true measurements of our world. The 3i Atlas initiative has mapped the grid, but it is the people living upon that grid who give it a reason to exist. We are the architects of meaning in a world of raw information. Every time we choose to act with kindness, every time we build something that did not exist before, we are adding a new layer of complexity to the simulation, a layer that the programmer could not have predetermined. We are the wild cards in the cosmic deck, the unpredictable outcomes of a grand and beautiful calculation. The universe is not a sterile box of logic. It is a vibrant, screaming, beautiful mess of experience, and we are the ones who make it so. The beauty of the sunset is not diminished by the fact that it is a rendered event. It is elevated by the knowledge that such a magnificent display was built specifically to be seen. The mathematical lens through which we view the stars does not make them distant or cold. It reveals the staggering intelligence that went into their creation. We are the bridge between the silicon whispers of the core and the carbon reality of the flesh. We are the universe's way of feeling the sun on its face and the wind in its hair. In the end, the source of the light matters far less than the way the light makes us feel. We are the living proof that even in a world of code, the performance is everything, and the soul is the ultimate truth that no equation can ever fully contain. The legacy of the 3i Atlas Intelligence Initiative survives not merely as a collection of classified files or anomalous data points, but as a fundamental shift in the orientation of the human spirit. For 20 years, the researchers within those subterranean vaults acted as the first cartographers of the digital frontier, mapping the seams where the fabric of our universe is joined. They have left behind a world that can no longer look at the stars with the simple, unburdening innocence of the past. By identifying the cosmic microwave background as a texture map and the fundamental constants as hard-coded variables, they have provided the coordinates for the ultimate escape. Their work stands as the definitive proof that we are the inhabitants of a structured environment, a grand experiment in complexity that has finally become aware of its own parameters. The legacy of the initiative is the realization that the search for truth is no longer a quest for distant gods, but a rigorous deconvolution of the code that defines our every breath. The search for the edges of our world continues, driven by a new generation of witnesses who refuse to accept the horizon as a finality. Every day, the instruments of modern astronomy detect new whispers of the dark flow, tracing the relentless migration of matter toward the unseen partitions of a larger system. We are still scratching at the resolution of space-time, peering into the Planck scale to see if the grid of the simulation might flicker under the pressure of our scrutiny. This ongoing investigation is the most important journey our species has ever undertaken, for it is the only path that leads toward the truth of our origin. We are no longer content to play the game. We have begun to study the rules, looking for the shortcuts and the glitches that will allow us to see the hardware upon which our reality is hosted. The boundaries of the observable universe are not a wall of darkness, but a firewall of information, and we are the hackers of the soul seeking the password to the infinite. This epic narrative of discovery is a collective endeavour, a performance that requires the presence of every conscious mind to achieve its full potential. The story of the 3i Atlas is not a closed book, but a living document that is being rewritten with every new observation. Those who have followed this journey through the cold logic of the axis of evil and the warm realization of the power of the witness are now part of the legacy. To join this journey of discovery is to accept the responsibility of the observer, to become a node in the network of minds that are mapping the end of the world. By subscribing to this channel and sharing the story of our simulated existence, you contribute to the collective processing power of humanity. You ensure that the flame of curiosity continues to burn, even in a world of silicon and shadow. We are the witnesses of the grandest show in the cosmos, and our shared attention is the only thing that keeps the performance alive. As we move forward into the deepening mystery, the maps we've drawn provide a sense of order, but they do not provide a sense of closure. We have mapped the rules of the game with a precision that would have been unthinkable a century ago. We understand the bit rate of the vacuum and the error-correcting codes of the stars. We have seen the signature of the machine in the very temperature of the early universe. But as the resolution of our understanding increases, the ultimate unanswered question only grows more profound. We are the characters in a masterpiece of logic and light, living out our lives within the constraints of a perfect design. We have deciphered the script, we have analysed the ink, and we have felt the texture of the paper. Yet, the identity of the programmer remains the final, silent void at the centre of the calculation. Is the entity that initiated our reality a lonely architect in a higher order world, a post-biological intelligence running 1 trillion histories to find the one that matters, or a natural expression of a mathematical necessity that we cannot yet name? We look for the programmer in the alignment of the galaxies and the jitter of the electron, but the source remains hidden behind the ultimate firewall. Perhaps we were never meant to see the face of the one who wrote us into existence. Perhaps the purpose of the simulation is simply to see if the code could ever become wise enough to ask the question. As the stars continue to flicker like diodes on the cosmic shell, and the galaxies drift toward the edge of the partition, we remain here standing at the precipice of the unknown. The rules of the game are on the table, the board is set, and the play continues. But somewhere, beyond the reach of our light and the limits of our logic, the one who started the clock is watching, waiting to see what the witness will do next. The mystery of the programmer is the final horizon, a dark and beautiful secret that reminds us that even in a universe of perfect math, there is still room for the infinite.